There we go.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rob Kay. I'm a recovered alcoholic. And the third step prayer, and as Leo said, is on page 63. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. Okay, we are on chapter 5, how it works, and we are at page 68, and we are now at the bottom of page 68. But before we do that, as we normally do, we're going to go up just a paragraph above that, so we never apologize. We've been going through the steps, and right now we are getting ready to talk about sex. So, Rob?
One of my favorite quotes about this book, because I see too many people go up to the podium and apologize to when they talk about God. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. At once, we commence to outgrow fear.
Absolutely. And a couple of things here. This is very well said. So there's not a lot of things to add to that. Not that other things aren't well said, but just in this particular passage here, it's pretty direct and accurate. So I highlighted the last portion of this paragraph. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. At once we commence to outgrow fear. That in and of itself is just between you and your higher power. And it's something that I think that you can do in a moment's notice, especially if you're up against something that you're thinking about, that you're not quite sure what to do. You have an opportunity to take just a few seconds and ask to have that fear removed. And then at once you are outgrowing it. So just an important note there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. This is a different portion of really our step 4, if you will. But this is something we're going to go through and work towards that. Now, the resentments that we've been looking at are our fears, our harms, and our conduct. And fears themselves, and I'll go through this one more time with everyone, is that we fear that we're going to lose something that we have. We're not going to get something that we want, or you're going to find out something that I did. So those are the type of fears that we're talking about as we go through this. All right, Rob, I'm going to turn it over to you and we'll get started. Thank you, sir.
Okay, bottom of page 68, everybody. Now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there. But above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. Then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think we do not have enough of it, or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them?
Absolutely. So we are going to be talking about sex here. It is something that we need to take a look at as alcoholics. We're trying to be sensible. I underlined sensible here. And then I also underlined it's so easy to get way off track. I think what we're going to find is that people are selfish. They use it as a weapon. They can withhold it as either way, whether they allow it or not. It is something that is problematic within couples and people. And I think the other important thing that we want to try to bring out of this particular paragraph is that we want to stay out of this controversy, and as it might come to, would allow a man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. Basically, we want to try to stay out of this, but not to the extent that we don't want to talk about it. It does seem to crop up in a lot of couples and issues and challenges and relationships, and it certainly has an impact on us as alcoholics. So it's something that we need to take a look at and deal with. Bob?
We've reviewed our own conduct over the years past, where we've been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate. Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? We got this all down on paper and looked at it.
Okay, first and foremost is we reviewed our own conduct, not others. That's the important thing here. And they drive that point home by whom have, and you could just take I and put in there instead of we. And you could say, I reviewed our own conduct over the years. Where had I been selfish, dishonest, and inconsiderate? Whom had I hurt? Did I unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness, et cetera, et cetera? So this is an important step here. It's one that's very hard to do. It's easy to talk about, but it's hard to actually do because we're so willing and wanting to point the finger at somebody else. It's us. This is the thing that we need to be asking these questions of ourselves. Now, as we've said before, there's no need to go into the story of itself. If you had hurt someone, you note the person that you hurt, you talk about the reason you hurt them, and that's it. And it's more of just a few words, just so that you've got something that you can actually remember what it is, and you can talk about it with somebody else when the time comes for that in your step 5. So the idea is an internal and very personal inventory of yourself in regards to these unfortunate things that we've done to other people. So that's kind of what they're asking here. And you can ask any number of additional questions that would apply to this as well. Rob?
In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised and loathed.
Yeah, this is that place where people they struggle, and even I struggled in times, and looking back in my life and the times that I probably was in a relationship with somebody for probably the wrong reasons, or at least I brought ill to the relationship because of some of the things that I had, which I might have hurt somebody, I might have been selfish or dishonest, inconsiderate, and that's really kind of one of the more important words, inconsiderate. When it comes to sex, there's being considerate goes a long way. I think that's an important element amongst all of the elements we're talking about. And the other part of this is that it's good to be to have these sex powers, if you will, and never to be used lightly or selfishly, nor despised or loathed. It should be something that's celebrated. I can't, to get into it too much here, but I think the idea here is that you should care about the other person. There should be a lot of consideration for them. And it should be done, or sex should be used as something that is a celebration, not something that is despised or loathed or lightly or selfishly. Not in it for yourself only. Rob.
Now, here we're trying to come up with a new plan for the future, what we hope the future will hold for us, a goal on how we want it to be in the future, so we don't live in the past over and over again. That's what we've been doing because we've been selfish and self-centered to the core. Whatever our ideal turn out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in doing so. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it.
Yeah, and real quick in that, the last part of this paragraph, in meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. I've underlined each specific matter twice, and then I highlighted the right answer will come if we want it. And that's a point of being to say that you're trying to be honest about this. And going back and making amends, this is one of the more sensitive areas, I think. I think it also provides some level of awkwardness. But if there's the ability to go back to a past relationship or a past partner and make an amend for something that you feel is necessary, then by all means, please do so. But don't forget about the current relationship you've got and the current partner you might be with, and that feeling as to whether or not that is going to bring harm to them if they are to learn of something that they may not know about from some past relationships. And in addition to that, directly with the other person, if it's going to stir up some bad emotions and stuff and create more harm, then it's probably best left alone. But it's something that you can talk to and come to terms with your higher power, and admitting it to another person in your step 5. So there are at least some avenues of getting it on paper, getting it out into the open without bringing harm or injury to other people. So it's not there is an avenue to get something out. That's what I'm trying to say there. Rob?
Remember, we ask God what we should do in each specific instance. Okay? A lot of people try to run on instinct again. They forget about God. Oh, this is what I should do to make things right. No, we ask God what we should do to make things right. We're not doing this on our own anymore. We're taking God with us in everything we do. God, what should I do about this situation? We keep praying. The right answer will come if we want it. The biggest word in the book, if. Okay? Remember, we got God on our side now. Okay, he's going to go with us in everything we do.
Absolutely.
God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are as fanatical with sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice.
Yep. And anything that seems to the extreme is probably best left alone. We're trying to find something that is more even, fair, and equitable. We're not looking at something that should be, again, taken to the extreme. And as I had said before in the book here, it says God or your higher power alone can judge your sex situation. And counsel with persons is often desirable, but we let our higher power be the final judge. And I think that that's important to have as your overall evaluation of this, because you never know what opinion is going to come out of the person that you might be sharing this with, and it may be an opinion that is, like we've said before, to the extreme, and you want to try to avoid that at all costs. Rob?
Yeah, we don't try to tell others how to act. That's between them and God. And remember another thing, it does not say in this book here that you have to wait a year to get into a relationship. That's none of our business. That's between God and yourself. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only a half truth. It depends on us and on our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and will have learned our lesson. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we're quite sure to drink. We're not theorizing. These are facts out of our experience.
And these experiences are based on real life for the first group of folks that helped write this book and the program that they set forth. So that is something to take seriously. And the other thing is, I highlighted this entire paragraph. I think it's an important one. It's one that I've actually read a number of times, even towards the end of reading How It Works. I read through this part again and again because I wanted to make sure that I reinforced with myself internally that you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to be perfect. You're striving, to just to do better, and it's progress, not perfection, that we're going after. So suppose you do fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. It's going to happen. Doesn't mean you're going to get drunk. Well, not necessarily, and that's what they're saying here. It depends on your motives. It depends on whether or not you're sorry and apologetic for what you've done. If you think that you're going to be forgiven, and that's another thing, you've got to be able to forgive yourself in this whole process, much more so than somebody else's forgiveness. And somebody else's forgiveness is very important, and obviously our higher power is the one that we seek out the most. But then the opposite is that if you're again, as I talked before, if you're using sex as a weapon and your conduct continues to harm others, then you are quite sure that you're not on the right path. And the end result is you're going to pick up another drink, and then another, and then another, and you're quite sure to drink. Again, based on experiences here, I took this to heart, and I tried to live it every day that I can. All right, Rob.
Yeah, here Bill is giving us a warning. If we're not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we're quite sure to drink. This is a warning. Okay, and this is the experience of the first 100 people. We're not theorizing. These are facts out of their experience. So take that to heart. Remember, access to power allows change in us. Before, we didn't have the needed power. Now we have the power to change. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for the strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves to harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache.
Right. Quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache. All right, so sum it up about sex. Earnestly pray for the right ideal and guidance in each questionable situation, and for sanity and for the strength to do the right thing. Always thinking in terms of what is the right thing to do, what is the next right thing to do. And again, if it does bring some potential clumsiness, awkwardness, if you do find yourself in that regard, just throw yourself into helping others. Remember, helping others is going to ensure immunity from drinking, but it's also going to bring a much better feeling about what you're doing. And when you feel better, then I think that you act better. And when you act better, then the other person or persons are affected positively in anything that you're going to be doing. So this would extend to sex as well. And it does mean this, we think of their needs and work for them. I think that we all know, especially this group in particular with regard to this age group, is that I think that the times that we've tried to satisfy or please the other person in ways that are incorporating with sex, you find that it's probably a lot more fulfilling and satisfying. So just a point of note there as well.
And again, Bill brings up the fact that if sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves to harder into helping others. again, we're having trouble, go help somebody else. And I love that about Bill, and all through the book, go help somebody else. Okay, you got a problem, go help somebody else. Takes us out of ourselves. It's, when all else fails, go help somebody. If we have been thorough about our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. We have listed and analyzed our resentments. We have begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill towards all men, even our enemies, where we look on them as sick people. We have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can.
Sure. And so here is we're trying to bring together all of the things that we have learned to do here and how it works. And again, they're asking some questions here, and these should be honestly answered and honestly gone after. And that is, have we been thorough about our personal inventory and written down a lot? Okay, we want to be comprehensive. You want to be accurate, and you want to make sure that it's brief, but enough on there that you can actually understand what you're writing down, why you're writing it down, and so that you can explain it to another person when you get to that step. We're not quite to step 5 here, but what we're trying to say is that, have you listed and analyzed your resentments? And that's the big thing. We're talking about your resentments, not somebody else's. And you've been able to actually start to see how destructive you've been, how negative you may have been, how hurtful you may have been to someone else or multiples of others. You're going to start to learn some tolerance, patience, and goodwill. There are some exercises that you're going to go through. I have some people that I had a very hard time pointing out my faults for whatever happened in that relationship. I had resentments towards these people for things that they had done, and it took me a long while to get through a couple of them. In fact, there were 2 in particular that I had to really work hard at. And it took a lot of prayer on my side, and a lot of soul searching, understanding what I had brought to the relationship, what the things that I had done that were detracting from the relationship, and realizing that they were sick people too. I understand that, but it took me a while to make sure that I wasn't thinking about their shortcomings and faults, but I was really just concentrating on my own. Now, in all honesty, I haven't reached out to either one of those folks. It may be a while, it may not happen. I don't know that we're not still in a bad place. One was, it was just a terrible, it impacted careers, it impacted relationships with family. It was a pretty bad situation in the end, and I'm not sure if reaching out to that person wouldn't stir things up again and cause another debacle, if you will. So I have come to terms with it. I'm at peace with it. They do not take up space in my head anymore, so they're not there rent free. Every once in a while they'll pop up when I'm thinking about things like this, but they quickly are set aside, and I can move on and I can do better going forward. Just to let you know, kind of the exercise and why it's so important to do what has been prescribed in this chapter of this book. Rob?
Yeah, we have begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. Resentments are the number one thing that we have. Okay. And we've learned on page 67 how to master resentments. We think of them as sick people. How can we best help them? Also, it says in the next paragraph, we can't help everyone, but we can show them patience, tolerance, and understanding. Remember, they too are spiritually sick, just as we were. It takes away, you know what? I can hate people, but who is it hurting? It's hurting myself. It's hurting my spirit. but I can look on people as they're sick too and have patience, tolerance, and understanding. It's, just a whole different way. Remember, the whole idea about the moral psychology that's in the doctor's opinion that he talked about is to change our thinking 180 degrees. So instead of us thinking about ourselves all the time, we're thinking about other people. How can we best help other people? It's an incredible as we come through this book. And we're only on page 70 for crying out loud. It only gets better. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. If you have already made a decision and an inventory of your gross or handicap, you have made a good beginning. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself.
Sure have. And absolutely, with regard to this again and again, and we're going to still do it more going forward. When we talk about for us what we could do, would not do for ourselves, this is not about working with you. It's about working with others. I hope that everyone in this room right now is convinced that the higher power can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. It certainly was an exercise that I went through. I was the educational type. It took me a while to find my higher power. And once I did, I started relying more and more on my higher power. And even after discovering it, there's still more practice and more patience and more exercise that has to happen to get better and better at it. And I also do at times forget and have to remind myself from time to time. So it's progress, not perfection. And we've talked about this inventory of your grosser handicaps. You've made a good beginning. Again, it's a very solid step forward. I was talking earlier today about the process of going through that and the different learning styles that people have, and having multiple tools in the toolbox that I think are important. Somebody might be more willing to write things out. Other people might be more receptive to doing a check in the block. So we have our own set of worksheets, and within that set of worksheets are 4 pages for your 4th step, for example. And it's a very comprehensive, but it is in large part kind of a check in the block kind of exercise. You do have to put down names, and there's a couple of places where you can fill in a block with a couple of 3 words and that type of thing. But by and large, you go across the page and kind of just check in the block as to what might be happening within that particular element that you're looking at right there. It's a good beginning. Swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. That's the big thing here. We're going to forget a few things. That's okay. If you remember them, just deal with them at that point. Get with another person, get them out in the open, and you yourself will find that you're lighter in your step. The blues are a little brighter. The greens are a little brighter. It's just things just feel better, and the relief and the weight off your shoulders is incredible. So that kind of covers chapter 5 and how it works, and we are really just at the halfway mark. So we're going to change gears just a little bit here and go into action. This is kind of putting things into perspective with regard to, now that we've done our step 4, what are the next few things that we need to do. This is a great chapter, what I would say with regard to a sponsor, and kind of prescribing just exactly how the next few steps are to be, and we'll try and bring those up as we go along here.
And Leo, I just want to say that Bill has got an incredible analogy of grosser handicaps, which I hope that when we bring him on at the end, that he will share with everybody. So Bill, just a heads up on your grosser handicaps analogy that you've used in the past. I love that. Okay, we're now on page 72, everybody. Into action, chapter 6. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? We have been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. We have admitted certain defects we have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. We have put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory. Now these are about to be cast out. This requires action on our part, which, when completed, will mean that we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects. This brings us to the fifth step in the program of recovery, mentioned in the preceding chapter.
It's absolutely. And so just as a clarification, we're just now at the fifth step, and we're going to figure out how to plan for and execute that fifth step. So we're not doing our fifth step just yet. We're going to go through this process of learning about it. Then you can do your fifth step. So we're just at it at this point. And a couple of things in the beginning. We've been trying to get a new attitude. I want to say, above all, you're trying to get humility. So if you're talking about a new attitude, one of the things you should be searching out and trying to achieve is humility. And after all, and I'll say this for that passage right there, we have been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. That's the purpose of step 4. Okay, so we're kind of reviewing that right now. So that's the purpose of step 4. And when we get down to the weak items, put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory, we are again talking about our resentments, which are the fears, the harms, and our conduct, as we've been reviewing those. And then another thing, as we get down here, we get God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our defects. Now, those defects, I want you to remember, are driven by our resentments. All right, so that's something to note there, that these defects right now are driven by those resentments, those fears, those harms, and your conduct. All right, so we are at step 5. Let's jump right in, Rob.
This is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. We think we have done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves. There is doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find it solitary, self-appraisal, insufficient. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. The best reason first. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. Trying to avoid this humbling experience, they have turned to easier methods. Almost invariably, they got drunk. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wonder why they fell. We think the reason is that they never completed their house cleaning. They took inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they had lost their egoism. They're in fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves, but they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story.
Okay, so if this isn't tapping on the top of your head a little bit, I'm not sure what is. This is a long paragraph here, and it is very difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. So mechanically, it's important that either as a sponsor, you ensure that you have built a level of confidence and security with your sponsee so that they are comfortable sharing this information with you. This is going to be very sensitive and very personal information, and you should treat it as such. If your sponsee has somebody else in mind and they have and they feel like that they can share this information with another person, by all means encourage them to do so. All right. If you've done your job as a sponsor well enough, and if you have created a safe environment for your sponsee, more than likely this person is going to share this information with you, because after all, as an alcoholic, you've probably been through the same things that they've been through, and you've experienced some of the same things that they've also experienced. And you'll know that because in the beginning here, when you share your own experiences to try and win another alcoholic over, which is a very powerful tool in your toolbox, you're going to find that they're going to go, yeah, that happened to me, or yeah, you get me, unlike somebody else that doesn't, whether that be a spouse or a friend or a family member that is non-alcoholic, just isn't going to get it. So that's the first and foremost thing I think is going to be an awareness here, because this is a very difficult step for people. And it also is important, and they bring it up here, if you skip this vital step, a lot of people will stop. And I've heard this time and again. You hear some people say, I did my first 3 steps and then I kind of stopped there. That's because they were kind of built up and made afraid of their step 4, which we've already debunked earlier. But some people will do their step 4 and then they'll stop there because they haven't built up and got that confidence in their ability to share this with somebody. And also they haven't found somebody that they can trust to do so. But it is very true that if you only do your first 3 steps and or you only do your first 4 steps, almost without fail, the people that have done that some that I've heard admit that that's what they've done, are coming back after a relapse and trying to do this again and again and again. And it's multiple relapses that just they keep stumbling over themselves. So do not avoid this step. It's very, very important. And maybe even setting it up as such when you're getting ready to do the step 4 with a particular sponsee, that you kind of make sure that they know that the next step is also vitally important. And again, you as a sponsor should be very, very sensitive to what they're going through, because after all, you've done it. And the other part is you lived through it and you came out of it on the other side a much better person. So make sure that they know that as well. I think that, in this case, when I said before, you're trying to get humility. If you lose humility in this, it's going to lead to taking another drink. It's a note that I've made for myself in this process here. Now, taking inventory, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. All right, it's so important. In fact, the worse something is, the more critical it is to get it out and to get it talked about. I can't overemphasize that enough. So, you as a sponsor have to be completely neutral. There's no judgment. There's also no, you're not there to tell your story when they're doing their step 5, as what happened to me. I will tell you though that it's important for them to dig down deep and feel comfortable enough that they can talk about the worst items here. If they're not unable to do that, then they've obviously not got enough of the humility, the fearlessness, and the honesty. And I've continued to underline humility in this passage here. And you need to be complete, as comprehensive as you possibly can. And I'm not talking about the fact that you should take a month trying to remember everything. I think that once you get into this exercise, it should kind of go pretty quickly. You don't want to get bogged down in it, but and you also have the opportunity to go through something, this whole process again, on an individual thought or an individual issue type of deal. So you want to be able to tell everything that you can, to be as complete as you can, because after all, the more complete you are, the even better you're going to feel. Very important part here. Very, very important part. And this is one where trust is sometimes difficult
Things
to
deep
attain,
down
but
inside.
it's easy to lose.
You froze up there, Leo.
Sorry about that. I think I'm back now. I just saw the bar come up.
You are.
Apologize.
Hey, no problem.
So anyway, Rob, I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay, I was just saying that until they told someone else all their life story, all the stuff that we've been hiding, we keep all these things hidden deep inside ourselves. We stuff it down, resentment. We talk about the gutter, how the water can't flow, which is similar to God, head to heart. God can't come through because of all these leaves that are blocking. Okay, the water can't flow through. So what we have to do is we have to stick our hand in. We have to get rid of all these resentments so the water can flow or God can come into our lives. Okay, so we tell another person in order to get rid of them. We voice it out loud so we don't have it stuck inside. Once it's out, it's gone. It's out in the universe. Remember, we tell ourselves for awareness, to God for forgiveness, and to another for humility. Remember, so much about this. God is saying you have to do your part. The first thing we need to attain this is humility, where we humble ourselves to God and we say we don't know all the answers. We are not God. Gary always said a great thing, and he says, when I wake up in the morning, God doesn't think he's Gary, but Gary sometimes thinks he's God. I can change that to me, which I should have done in the first place. But when I wake up in the morning, sometimes I think I'm God. God doesn't do that. So I have to change my thinking. I'm not God. God is my director. I am his actor. Okay. He is the Father. I am his son. I am here to do his work and to do his work as well as I can do it. Once I do that, I'm on my way to an incredible life. More than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He is very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it.
No, and this is real quick. We all know what this is. We all have the things that we want people to think of us, but deep down inside, we know we've got these, different traits and these different personality things that are going on that we may not want other people to see of us. And we do want that good reputation. Nobody wants a bad reputation. And we're afraid that if they were to see some of our vulnerable, lesser desirable traits, that we would lose that reputation that we've worked hard to get. But remember, it is, in fact, you're not being truthful with yourself, with your higher power. And while I'm not saying jump out there and give all of your bad things and put them out in front of people and see how they react, that's not my point. My point is to work on those the bad traits and try and eliminate them from your psyche and your personality as best you can, and try to accentuate the more positive things, but in a real and honest and humble way. So that's really what they're trying to say here. Rob?
Inconsistency is made worse by the things he does on his sprees. Coming to his senses, he is revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. These memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think someone might have observed him. As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself. He hopes they will never see the light of day. He is under constant fear and tension. That makes for more drinking.
It makes for more drinking, and it also makes for feeling ill about yourself, not feeling positive about what you're doing. It creates kind of this dark cloud over everything. I highlighted this area here. Coming to his senses, he is revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. I'll have to be honest with you. My wife recorded me one time on her phone, and I was appalled. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that the things that I was sitting there acting, I mean, one, I was drunk, and the things that I was saying, it hardly could even hear what I was saying. But the things where I was saying were just reprehensible, and I was just, I couldn't believe it. And it was a real eye opener for me. So I don't have to vaguely remember. All I have to do is, I don't anymore, but I watched that video a couple of 3 times and was just appalled. And they are nightmares. I do remember getting myself into situations. I may not have remembered the situation after the fact, but I remember getting into it, and then I remember waking up from it, and I can only imagine what it would have been, what I would have put somebody through in that dark time, that blackout phase or period, as far as that goes. And sure, it's easy to push those things down and try to cover them up. The real exercise here, the real being honest and humble, is to get them out and open and talk with somebody else about them. Just so that you don't have that ill feeling of yourself, you're not being untrue to your higher power, and you are exercising what is important here, and that is to deal with those issues as you're going along, especially with another person. Rob?
Psychologists are inclined to agree with us. We have spent thousands of dollars for examinations. We know but few instances where we have given these doctors a fair break. We have seldom told them the whole truth, nor have we followed their advice. Unwilling to be honest with these sympathetic men, we were honest with no one else. Small wonder many in the medical profession have a low opinion of alcoholics and their chance for recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I first started seeing a counselor, I was doing it to appease others. I was saying what I thought that they wanted me to say. I wasn't being honest with myself. I wasn't being honest with the counselors. It wasn't until I literally got to the last couple of therapists that I actually continue to see that I started being completely open and honest, and it started to actually stick, and it started to actually work in positive ways. I can't tell you how many times that I know people aren't completely honest with their counselors and psychologists and things like that if they do in fact seek out therapy, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And I'm not at all apologetic with regard to my admission of doing that. I have found that I've got a lot of great strength from seeing the psychologist that I see now. And he's a wonderful older gentleman that we've now kind of graduated, and we're talking about the philosophy of all things of alcoholism and stuff, and it gets to be at a much higher plane. So I really enjoy that. But I have almost done a complete step 5 with him as well, which was an interesting dynamic to have done it with a sponsor and then with what you might consider as a medical professional as well. It's incredibly enlightening. I can't begin to tell you how nice it is. And you guys, I'm probably preaching to the choir, is just how enlightening that it is. So it's important as a sponsor to get that across to your sponsee and somebody that you're working with.
And remember, if you need outside help, you need outside help. We are not doctors. AA is not therapy. We have experience on how to quit drinking, on how to get a spiritual experience so that the malady is not there anymore. So if you need therapy, go for it, okay? Also, medication. We are not doctors. We cannot tell people whether to take medication, not take medication. Doctors are learned people, use them for what they're good for. We must be entirely honest with somebody if we expect to live long or happily in this world. Rightly and naturally, we think well before we choose the person or persons with whom to take this intimate and confidential step. Those of us belong to a religious denomination which requires confession must, and of course, will want to go to the properly appointed authority, whose duty it is to receive it. Though we have no religious connection, we may still do well to talk with someone ordained by an established religion. We often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem. Of course, we sometimes encounter people who do not understand alcoholics.
Well, sure. And this is really that exercise that you're going to want to go through or have your sponsee go through so that they understand how important it is to pick the right person to do this step 5 with. We're going to learn a little bit more about it as we go along. But the point being here is, and what this is doing now is just prepping the person for doing their step 5. We haven't done it yet. We're still just deciding on who we're going to do it with. And if you have, in fact, built up that level of confidence and that personal trust that you have with your sponsee, then you're more than likely going to be that person that they're going to be sitting down and sharing with. But just like it says here, clergy or other professional out there would be an adequate and an appropriate person to talk to if that's what makes this person more comfortable. But as you'll see here, it's about setting the stage, if you will, and prepping the other person who's going to be receiving the step 5 in their conduct and the way that they're supposed to think about this going forward, because it's also not only picking the right person, but also getting that person in the right frame of mind with regard to doing that. One thing I wanted to go back to real quick here, when we talk about the inconsistency is made worse by things that you do on a spree, I also want to say this is, sometimes your inconsistencies get worse when you're sober. All right. So just be aware that just because you're sober doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to be sunshine and
Lollipops.
brighter blue skies and green grass. What was that, Rob?
Lollipops.
Right,
Sunshine and lollipops.
Yep, that's it. It's not going to necessarily be that. So be aware that just because you're sober doesn't mean that everything is going to get better. Sometimes it gets worse, and that's just something you've got to look for, be aware of, and be aware of, and get and work on. It's just one of the things I wanted to go back to. All right. This is about the person that you're looking for. Rob?
If we cannot or would rather not do this, we search our acquaintance for a closed-mouthed, understanding friend. Perhaps our doctor or psychologist will be the person. It may be one of our own family, but we cannot disclose anything to our wives or our parents, which will hurt them and make them unhappy. We have no right to save our own skin at another person's expense. Such parts of our story we tell to someone who will understand, yet be unaffected. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others.
Sure. I think there's kind of a disclaimer here. Family members are typically not necessarily the best group of people to choose a person out of that. Now, I have heard in the past where somebody had picked a brother to go through part of this with, because they had gone through some of the same things together, and so it made sense for them to do a portion of their step 4 with them. I'm sorry, step 5. The other thing to do is that sometimes, and I've said this before, on rare occasion, you've got women that are sponsoring men and you've got men that are sponsoring women. Maybe portions of what they're going to admit and talk about, they might feel a little bit awkward or uncomfortable talking about with the opposite sex. And so they may actually want to try to find somebody of the same sex in order to share that portion with. And that's okay to break it up a little bit. The idea here isn't that it has to be one person. The idea here is that it has to be comprehensive and complete and open and honest. But you are looking for somebody that's going to be treat this whole exercise in confidence, and they're going to be an understanding in the sense that they're understanding as to what you're going through and what their role is. They don't necessarily have to be understanding in what they hear from you, but they should not be judgmental. That's the other piece of this. You really want to be with somebody that's not going to pass judgment onto you, because all that's going to do is cause you to lose trust, lose confidence. You're going to bury some of the worst things that you haven't talked about, and that's going to create a backstep on your progress in getting and moving forward with your sobriety and your recovery. And it is important that I think I've heard once where somebody decided to pick their wife to do their step 5 with, and before they got through explaining what they went through, they were shaking their head and smiling and saying that that was not the best thing to do, because it actually created a lot of problems. And
are they still married, Leo?
I think they are, but I can tell you that the relationship was tested. So,
oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, and that brings up another point. People will write these things down. They're step 4. It's something that you want to keep to yourself, and not necessarily let it fall into other people's hands, especially if you haven't written it out completely and it doesn't make sense to somebody else. They're going to start drawing their own conclusions, and that's not a good thing. So anyway, just probably something we should have said when we were talking about step 4. All right, Rob.
Okay, I'm just going to throw one thing in. We're coming up to
Oh,
the
yeah.
hour, so you'll probably want to bring Bill into it, but the rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. This is a new spiritual principle for us. Okay? We have to be hard on ourselves, but think of other people, be considerate.
Yes, we are going to stop there. And Bill, I apologize. I wanted to give you a little bit more time because there's a lot of ground we covered today in both chapter 5 and now a portion of chapter 6. So please, if you don't mind, take a couple of extra minutes if you feel it necessary, and we'll go just a couple of minutes over, and we'll be with that. So hopefully everybody can stick around for a couple of extra minutes. Bill?
Okay, hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. I'll try to be as quick as I can. I know that there's a lot of stuff here that we covered. We started off on the sex inventory, and the sex inventory really isn't about the sex act. It's more about relationships and how we treat other people. That's really what it comes down to. And it talks in here about making amends. If you have to make amends to an ex or somebody that you were in some kind of a relationship with, it's a really, really good idea to do it in a public place. Don't meet them in the local motel or something like that, because things are going to go awry. And it's really good to get your sponsor's advice on this, because sometimes some people we can't make amends to. You know, if you were in a relationship with somebody, sometimes it's better off just to stay away from them, because you don't want to cause more trouble, and then you're going to have to make amends for making amends. It's going to get all out of hand. And it tells us in here, if sex is very troublesome, we try to help other people. That's basically AA's fix for everything. Well, whenever we have a problem, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. That's what this tells us. Some people tell you should go take a cold shower. AA tells you go help somebody else. That's basically our fix for everything. And right at the end of this, after we finish it, it says, we have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men. We're starting to change here at this point. After we've gone through this process of doing this inventory, and so we can see what's wrong with us, we start to take a different outlook on other people. We're starting to have a spiritual change or spiritual experience at this point. That's a personality change. We're starting to change. We're learning tolerance and patience and goodwill toward everyone. And this doesn't happen when we first just start off and we do 1, 2, 3. It starts happening after we look at ourselves and we start pointing our finger at ourselves instead of everybody else. Then we start to get more tolerant of other people. So this is a really, really important step. And if you skip this, you're really going to be in a lot of trouble as far as alcoholism is concerned. And then it told us on page 71, it says if we made a decision and an inventory of our grosser handicaps. It talks about our grosser handicaps. That's what we're trying to get. We're trying to get to the big stuff, the stuff that's eating your lunch. You know, we're not looking for what happened in kindergarten, that the kid who took the last cupcake so you didn't get it at the cupcake party in kindergarten. If that's really, really bothering you, the next time we have a cupcake party, you can have mine. I mean, that's not the stuff we're looking for. We're looking for the grosser stuff. And the analogy that I like to use on this grosser stuff, when you start doing your house cleaning, let's say you're going to clean up your yard. You got some leaves in the yard and some weeds and that kind of stuff. So you go down to the home store, you buy a weed whacker and some of those big paper bags that you put the junk in, that you get the yard waste and all of that kind of stuff. You get a rake and you're going to clean up the yard. Okay, so you wait till Saturday, and Friday night we have a windstorm and a big tree blows down in the middle of the yard. Well, you don't go out and rake the leaves around this tree that's laying down there. You forget about that little stuff right now. You've got to get to the grosser stuff first. You've got to get that tree out of there. That's what's blocking you off from using your yard. You can live with some leaves on the ground. You can live with a little bit of weeds there. You've got to get rid of the grosser thing first. You got to get a truck and a chainsaw or a tree service, and you got to get that big tree out of there. Because if you don't do that, it's not going to do anything just to try to rake up some leaves around this tree that's laying in the middle of your yard. We have to go after the grosser stuff. That's the stuff that's going to make us drink. That's the stuff that's going to drive us back out. We can't just look at the little stuff and forget about the grosser stuff. That's why he's telling us here. We have to make an inventory of our grosser handicaps, the big stuff, what's eating your lunch. We got to get rid of that. And then it says we made a good beginning if we've done that. We've only made a beginning here. So we got a lot more work to do. And this isn't the end of it. And then we jumped into step 5. And step 5 is like a really good step here. And they're telling us, they give us some warnings here. And the first warning they give us is on page 72. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. So they're telling us if we skip this, it doesn't say you won't overcome drinking. It says we may not. We're putting the odds against ourselves if we don't do step 5. And he asks us a lot of questions in here too. They're not posed as questions, but you can turn them into questions. It says time after time the newcomer tried to keep to themselves certain facts. Are you trying to keep certain facts to yourself? In other words, are you trying to hide things? He's got questions like that all throughout here. And on page 73, it says that they never completed their house cleaning. You can turn that into a question. Did you complete your house cleaning? Your house cleaning is not just step 4. Step 5 is a major part of your house cleaning. So we're supposed to do that. And he's got warnings in here. And it says they only thought they had lost their egotism and fear. That's a warning. We only thought that we lost our egotism and fear. When we leave stuff out, we're not going to lose our egotism and fear. So there's a lot of stuff in here, and it gives us some suggestions on who we can use. And I think when he gets down to the point where he says use a family member, I think Bill was running out of suggestions. I don't think it's a good idea to use a family member. The best person you can do this with is your sponsor. And if you don't have a sponsor, you really need to get one. Because your sponsor, if your sponsor's been through this process, if there's somebody sponsoring you that hasn't been through this process, something's wrong with that. You need to go to have a sponsor that's been through this process and understands it, and that's the best person to do it with. And you can do it with more than one person. It says on the top of the page, it says, before we choose the person or persons with whom to take this intimate and confidential step. So you can choose a person or persons. You can do this with more than one person. If something is going to affect a person and you don't want to tell it to them, you can go tell that to somebody else. As long as you get this stuff out, that's really what's important. And it says you can find an acquaintance or a closed mouth friend. So what you have to do is you have to find somebody that's not going to blabble your 5th step all over the place. So he's giving us suggestions on how to do it. And again, I personally wouldn't use a family member because there's too much involvement there. We're emotionally involved with each other, and it just wouldn't work out right because there's certain things you don't want to tell to your family, and there's certain things that your family doesn't want to listen to. So you're better off doing it. That's why this is an anonymous program. We're better off doing things with strangers. For some reason, it just works out better that way. All right. Thanks a lot for letting me share. That's all I got.
Bill, that was great. Thank you for taking the time, and I appreciate everybody staying over just a few extra minutes today. All right, let's go ahead and close things out with the Serenity Prayer, and then we'll open it up for discussion, Rob.
Sounds great, Leo. Thank you. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.